righty, ladies and gentlemen, let's get started. Let's plunge right into the dirt pile. It was a good win. They did what they were supposed to do. Oh, they didn't win by double digits like I thought they would or like I thought they should have. The defense played very well. Now, again, it was against an anemic Browns offense. I hate to put all these qualifiers in, but I have to. Indulge me. Cooper DeJean started a solid start back there. He was flummoxed and flim-flammed on a couple of plays, but he was solid as a rookie. Quinyon Mitchell the same. Jalen Hurts, the quarterback, very efficient. With a great quarterback rating yesterday and a few key throws. And, of course, the big one being the 40-yarder late to A.J. that clinched the game. But for most of this game, the Eagles looked very ordinary. I'm watching this game. The crowd's not into it. The crowd's agitated. And I tweet out during this game, did the Eagles look like a well-coached team to you? Just asking. As it turned out, they made plays in the end to win the game, which is all well and good. But that does not belie the fact that for most of the game, they were just a boring lot of an NFL team. Which brings me to the coach, as far as being a well-coached team. For the record, I am not a fan of Nick Sirianni. I think that if you have listened to me over the last few weeks, you know that I'm not a fan of Nick Sirianni. In fact, I don't even like him a little bit. But the issue really is not whether I like him. But the issue is whether he is an adequate enough coach to lead an NFL team to some kind of a lofty plateau. And to that, I think not. It is such low-hanging fruit. It's so obvious to rip into Sirianni for how he handled the aftermath of yesterday's win over the Browns. Taunting fans who gave him crap with an ear cup. What is he, 14 years old? And then he brings his kid as some sort of an emotional shield to the post-game press conference. It's weak, it's fake, it's insulting to the reporters in there who are supposed to do their job, which is to ask the tough questions to this coach related to the subject. And the tough questions were, the fans are really impatient with you, dude. How do you feel about that? He's got his kids out there. Now, does anyone out there believe that this Dennis the Menace can be a real leader of men, a real leader of an NFL football team? Look, the Eagles might be able to win 2 of their next 3 games, if not all 3. And maybe then people will be back on board with the team maybe thinking they could do something this year. But I'm just not feeling this team with this coach to do anything that remotely resembles a championship. Time's yours, Bill.
I don't know how to follow it up, Mike. I don't know how to follow that up. Look, let's start with the coach, because you're right. It's low-hanging fruit. We'll start with Nick Sirianni. Everybody knows I've defended him. Everybody knows I thought he deserved to come back. I can't defend his behavior yesterday. It's not becoming of a head coach in the NFL. When there are 32 NFL head coaches, it's one of the most coveted jobs. If you're a sports guy, it's one of the most coveted jobs in the world. There's supposed to be only 32 people who are worthy of that job. And Nick Sirianni's behavior yesterday is not worthy of a head coach in the NFL. And I had less of a problem, not saying I agreed with it, but I had less of a problem with him jawing back at fans who were probably chanting "Fire Nick" the whole game. I had less of a problem with that than I did with him bringing 3 kids to his post-game press conference in a Week 6 game against the Cleveland Browns that you barely won. It's unprofessional. It is unprofessional to do that. If you had just won the NFC Championship, you had just won the Super Bowl, and you want your kids to share in the joy, okay, that's a different scenario. But it's very unprofessional to bring your kids. I can't defend that, Mike. But I will say, as far as the game was concerned, I did think there were a lot more positives than negatives with the Philadelphia Eagles yesterday. Yes, it wasn't the blowout as far as the score indicated that a lot of us wanted, especially me. I wanted to see a blowout. But when you really dive deep into the numbers, the Eagles played okay. They did pretty well. I know the Browns' offense is terrible. Well, what else could the defense have done? They held them to 9 points. They came into this game with only 6 sacks in 4 games. They had 5 yesterday. They held them to 3 of 12 on third down. They held them to 244 total yards, which they had been averaging, giving up 366 coming in. So the defensive performance was great. And then you look at the offense. The Browns' defense has not been their problem. The Browns' defense is a pretty good defense. The offense put up 375 yards. They put up 256 passing yards on a defense that was a top 8 pass defense, giving up only 184. That's the most yards in the air that the Browns have given up all season. The Eagles did yesterday. So there were positives. No turnovers, as you mentioned. That's the first time in the last 9 regular season games that they haven't turned the ball over. 20 turnovers in their last 9 regular season games, 0 yesterday. So there was a lot of good. Cooper DeJean, Grant Calcaterra, they battled through injuries. But instead of us talking about the good today, we have to talk about the head coach. There's no excuse for it. There really isn't.
But I get it. You're Mr. Positive. I get it. And I understand they won the game. And I can't sit here and complain after a win when there were some efficient things. Do you get the impression that they're a very good team? Do you get the impression that they're a very well-coached team? Because most of that game was a slog against a very inferior opponent. Most of the game was a slog. And I don't care what the numbers say. People were impatient for a reason. They weren't seeing performance with that team. Defensively, yeah, but I mean, really, is it that difficult to defend the Cleveland Browns?
No, but what else could the defense have done for people to feel better?
But this is a team that hadn't converted a freaking third down all year.
And they didn't let them in the end zone. I mean, the defense didn't give up a touchdown yesterday.
I'm talking about being able to dominate a bad opponent, and they did not. They slogged through a whole game.
The blocked field goal for a touchdown changes everything. The game was not as close as the scoreboard indicated. It just wasn't. The Eagles dominated in every facet of that game outside of a blocked field goal for a touchdown. You take that away, this is not a close game. And it never felt like, I watched that entire game, it never felt like they were going to lose.
It's not a close game when you dominate a scoreboard. That's what's not a close game.
I get it, but did you ever watch in that game? Maybe you did. I never felt like there was a chance the Eagles lost that game.
I didn't think so either, but that doesn't mean it's impressive. I'm looking at a big picture here. I'm looking at how good is this team? Do they look like a really good team? Do they look like a well-coached team? And I don't come to a conclusion yes on either point. I just don't. I'm sorry. Maybe I'm asking for too much. And a win is a win in the NFL. As the eloquent Mr. Sirianni said after the game that it's hard to win in the NFL. I get all that. I don't look at this team as a team that's any threat to do anything this year.
I understand the frustrations because a lot of people wanted this to be a blowout. But the defense, we all agree, there was nothing else the defense could have done that would have made you happy. They dominated the game. As far as offensively, the Cleveland Browns don't have a bad defense.
They were up 13-10 going into the fourth quarter.
And the Cleveland
they kicked a field goal in the third quarter.
The Cleveland Browns defense has not been bad this season.
Stop it. They're making me crazy.
They are coming into this game. You're talking about a top 13 defense in terms of yards against, a top 8 defense in terms of passing yards. They had 14 sacks coming in. The Eagles let up 1 sack. That was without Jordan Mailata. They let up 1 sack, 0 turnovers. Yes, I understand we're upset with the coach. We're upset with his behavior. We're upset with what he did at the press conference. But when you look at this game, it wasn't as bad as some fans are acting like it was. It really wasn't that bad of a game. It was a win.
It's not a bad game if you just count the game. When you count beyond the game, what are they? This is what I'm asking you. Forget about let's focus on them beating the Browns and the Browns were this and the Browns were that. Who cares what the Browns were? They stink. They're going to win 3 games the whole year.
They do stink. I don't know what this team is, and that is probably the problem. I think they're still trying to find themselves. But all offseason, I kept saying we got to be patient with this team. New coordinators on both sides of the football. They're going through a lot of change. But yet, we don't want to be patient because of the way last season ended. At the end of the day, you're sitting here, you're 3-2. They're still trying to find themselves. They've battled injury. You didn't have A.J. Brown for a couple games. You didn't have Lane Johnson. You didn't have Devontae Smith. And then in this game, you lose Darius Slay. You lose Jordan Mailata. You lose Dallas Goedert. We are ignoring some of the things they're overcoming because of our hatred for the coach.
Now forget the hatred for the coach. I'm watching the freaking game. The coach didn't even come up in my brain until the end when he did this ridiculousness. I'm watching the game. I'm going, what am I seeing here with this team? What is this team? You mean to tell me as you're watching that first half, you were impressed? That you said, oh, you know what, this is a good game? Were you saying that?
I want to see the offense come out to a quicker start. That's killing them in the first quarter. But
they haven't scored a point in the first quarter again.
And it's killing this team. It is. But
what were you seeing?
I saw a lot more good.
With?
There was a lot more good yesterday than bad. There was.
God.